On a bright summer day, Shinomiya Hakage, a third-year student, sits at his classroom desk, the warm sunlight streaming through the windows as he prepares for his final exams. These aren't the usual academic tests. These are survival trials organized by the school. He has spent years meticulously studying survival techniques, watching countless videos, and joining numerous practice tours. Survival has always been his favorite hobby, and he feels confident that all this preparation has brought him close to his goal. The only thing left is to gain real-world experience. A sudden thud hits his head, and when he looks up, a notorious class bully stands smirking, having just thrown a paper ball at him. The boy mocks his first name, Hakage, teasing him to make a shadow clones, and presses him to try it despite knowing it's fiction. Shinomiya simply retorts that if such feats were possible, he would have done them long ago. He turns back to his desk, recalling that he holds little respect in class and ranks low among his peers. But he is disciplined enough not to let petty bullying affect him. Resting his head, he closes his eyes, silently wishing for summer break to arrive quickly. Suddenly, a strange shift in his surroundings pulls him from his thoughts. Opening his eyes, he finds himself standing in front of a cave, deep within a wild forest. Shock and confusion strike him. He was just in his classroom moments ago, and now there is nothing but trees and shadows stretching in every direction. His mind races, questioning whether this is reality or a dream. Reality hits when he checks his bag. His phone shows no signal, no Wi-Fi, leaving him with only a flare strapped to his back for sending a weak distress signal. He pulls out his handkerchief, still damp from lunch, and tries to steady his thoughts, wondering how he was transported from school to this wilderness. Now, confronted with the real deal, he decides to seize the moment, eager to put years of survival training into practice. Dream or not, he resolves to enjoy this survival experience to the fullest. He takes a deep breath to calm himself, prioritizing the need to understand his surroundings while the sun still hangs high, scouting for a safe base to spend the night. As he moves cautiously, the forest comes alive. Shadows of monkeys leap across branches, squirrels scurry among the trees, and the muddy earth bears the deep footprints of wild boars, all silent witnesses to the challenge he is about to face. He reasons that as long as there are animals around, he could hunt them for food if needed. Soon, the faint sound of flowing water catches his attention, and he follows it until he discovers a river, a true lifeline for anyone in a survival situation. He inspects the water carefully. It looks clear, but he doesn't want to risk an upset stomach. Remembering methods of distilling and filtering water from his years of preparation, he instead decides to use the purification function of the bottles he brought, filling 3 from his bag. Well prepared as always, he feels relieved knowing water won't be a problem. Taking a sip, the taste is surprisingly refreshing, heightened by the surrounding wilderness. With hydration secured, he sets his sights on finding a cave to use as a base for the night. While water is solved, food is the next concern. For now, he decides he can nibble on edible plants and quietly hopes a sea might be nearby. Suddenly, sounds rustle through the bushes, human-like and deliberate. Shinomiya moves cautiously, staying alert as he approaches. Peering through, he sees a girl wearing the same school uniform. Shocked by the unexpected sight, he accidentally catches a glimpse of her chest, prompting a startled shout that sends the girl recoiling. Both are initially convinced they've encountered some primitive being. Recognition clicks shortly after. Shinomiya realizes these girls are classmates, and they quickly identify him as the ninja of their group. In terms of social hierarchy, they belong to the high-ranking students who had previously targeted him with paper balls and erasers. Among them, the blonde girl with short hair, Yuki Mana, commands the group with sharp authority. The black-haired girl is Futagawa, popular among otaku circles, and carries a composed, almost sugar baby-like charm. Nimi Karen has shared the same class with Shinomiya for 3 years, but has never interacted with him directly. Finally, Nico Arisa, who once worked at a karaoke bar, had left after a senior attempted to assault her. Shinomiya feels a quiet pride in his careful observations. By pretending to rest in class over the years, He had silently gathered all this information, a strict, unspoken rule of survival he had always lived by. The girls explain that they, too, suddenly found themselves lying on the ground, disoriented, and Shinomiya shares that he woke up in front of the cave. Arisa's eyes widen in surprise at the sight of him holding a knife with the ease of a true ninja. He simply grins and explains that after all, he is a survivalist, which reminds the others that he had always been known as a survival enthusiast back in class. Mana points out that if Shinomiya is here with them, they might encounter other boys from their class as well, perhaps Reito or Byakuya. Karen quickly adds that it would make sense for them to stick with him, since he claims to be a survival expert and clearly has knowledge and useful tools. Mana nods in agreement and formally announces that from now on, Shinomiya will become part of their group. He doesn't object, seeing the practical advantage of having more people to increase their chances of survival. Then, unexpectedly, Arisa leans forward and asks whether ninjas have no sexual desires, which catches him completely off guard. She continues, noting that boys usually react when surrounded by girls, especially in close proximity, hinting at physical reactions. Flustered, Shinomiya quickly clarifies that he does experience such desires, and that it is normal for a man to react in certain situations. But now is not the time to dwell on that. He refocuses, explaining his plans. He intends to lead them all to the cave first, then set out to find the sea. Arisa teases that it seems he wants to write some kind of message in the sand, to which he simply confirms that his real goal is personal curiosity. He has always been fascinated by the ocean and wants to see it up close. Shinomiya never imagined that one day he would be having a conversation with these popular girls. Arisa breaks the silence, asking if they were still somewhere in Japan. Eri replies thoughtfully that the weather feels more like a place such as Hokkaido. Karen frowns, pointing out that if that were the case, they should still be able to get phone signals. From this, one thing becomes clear: they are currently on an uninhabited island. Mana speculates that the dense vegetation might be blocking any signals, prompting Arisa to call her an idiot for still being delusional. Karen, clearly annoyed, bumps into Shinomiya, who has suddenly stopped walking. He motions for everyone to be quiet, and as they follow his gaze, they freeze. A ferocious tiger prowls just outside the cave. Any sudden movement could provoke it, but more concerning than the immediate danger is the tiger itself. Japan is not home to such creatures. Observing the surroundings, Shinomiya realizes they are clearly far from home. The absence of phone signals and the tracks of wild boars and chipmunks along the path confirm it. Karen and Mana ask what these signs mean, and he explains that the marks indicate the territories of different animals within the forest, suggesting a highly unusual ecosystem. Seeing such a mix of creatures together is almost impossible. Mana, exasperated, asks where he thinks they are. Shinomiya hesitates before saying, even if it sounds crazy, that his best guess is they might be in another world. The words hit the group like a shockwave. Mana shouts at him, calling him an idiot for even entertaining such nonsense. At that moment, the tiger seems to sense something, and everyone goes silent. Shinomiya leans closer to Mana, quietly pointing out that even putting the ecosystem aside, the way they arrived here is stranger still. He was resting at school one moment, and standing in the middle of a forest the next. Mana still struggles to believe they could be in another world, and Shinomiya adds cautiously that it is only his theory and he could be wrong. Regardless, he insists that they need to leave the area while the tiger remains unaware of them. Afterward, as the girls drink from the river, they are surprised to notice how well Shinomiya had prepared, even with just basic supplies, demonstrating his meticulous survival instincts. Arisa hesitates for a moment, feeling shy at the thought that drinking from Shinomiya's bottle might be like an indirect kiss. Shinomiya reassures her calmly that he doesn't drink directly from the bottle with his lips, and with that, she quickly takes a sip. She immediately urges Mana to drink as well, though Mana seems distracted and uneasy, her mind caught up in thoughts of when, or if, they might ever return home. Shinomiya understands her concern, but he is realistic. If they truly are in another world, getting back would be far from simple. Mana doesn't appear comforted by his words, prompting Karen to ask if there's any way to confirm that they are indeed in another world. Shinomiya explains that to be certain, they would need to leave the forest and possibly come across some kind of settlement. Hearing this, Mana steels herself, fully determined to find a way back home. Though worry clouds her expression as she realizes they have no clear path out of the forest. Shinomiya, considering their options, suggests they could try using a mobile phone camera from the top of a tree to scout the area. Arisa protests that it might be too difficult, but Shinomiya assures her he can handle it, though he asks if one of the girls can lend him a phone with a higher quality camera. Karen offers hers along with a selfie stick, volunteering to teach him how to use it since it's his first time. With her guidance, Shinomiya climbs the tree with surprising agility, moving as swiftly and fluidly as a monkey. The girls watch in amazement, laughing and cracking jokes at how effortlessly he scales the branches. Their nervous tension eases, replaced with the light-hearted amusement of seeing him display such natural skill, a reminder of the survival instincts that had always set him apart. Shinomiya watches the girls and feels a small sense of relief, seeing them lighten up despite the strange circumstances. He raises the selfie stick and phone high, snapping pictures in multiple directions to scout the forest. Suddenly, Mana notices movement in the trees, and before Shinomiya can react, something snatches the stick and phone from his hands. Looking closer, he realizes a monkey is responsible. The girls tease him, asking how he could possibly lose to a monkey, but Shinomiya waves them off, saying this isn't the time for joking. He climbs down swiftly, only to find the same monkey perched in Mana's lap. Karen quickly retrieves the stick and phone while Mana proudly claims she has a natural talent for befriending animals. However, it quickly becomes clear that the monkey's attention isn't entirely innocent. It begins groping her. Shinomiya and the others rush to intervene, but in the chaos, Shinomiya ends up handling not one but two unexpected objects, experiencing their softness for the first time without realizing he is mimicking the monkey's earlier actions. Lana shouts in outrage, slapping him and scolding that the monkey was just playing, but he clearly was not. Shinomiya regains focus and asks Karen to check the photos they managed to capture. Scanning the gallery, they find no signs of any settlements, prompting a worried murmuring among the girls. Yet Shinomiya points out that the attempt was not in vain. They now know there is a sea nearby. The girls recall his earlier comment about locating the ocean as a source of vital survival resources. Mana immediately asks if there could be any islands nearby, and Arisa suddenly shouts that she spotted something resembling one in the pictures. They zoom in, and Karen applies her advanced eye-enhancing technology to clarify the image. Slowly, the outline becomes unmistakable. A small island lies within reach. A major discovery. Mana seeks confirmation from Shinomiya, and he assures her it's a promising find, noting that the island might even hold people if they are still in a world connected to their own. Excitedly, Arisa exclaims that this greatly improves their chances of rescue. With renewed determination, Shinomiya uses the phone's compass to chart a course toward the sea, leaving subtle landmarks along the way to ensure they can retrace their path even if the phone battery dies. Mana asks why he didn't just bring along a simple analog compass with the other supplies, which leaves Shinomiya feeling slightly embarrassed as a survivalist. Shaking off the awkwardness, he leads the girls carefully through the forest, keeping his senses sharp. At one point, he notices Mana trying to guess what he's thinking. He admits that his mind is occupied with how to reclaim the cave from the tiger, a task complicated by the fact that a knife won't be much help. Still, he knows that as long as they remain on this island, they must find a way to fend off predators. Otherwise, danger will inevitably seek them out. Eri, visibly troubled, asks what they should do next. Shinomiya replies that he has been formulating a plan, but isn't entirely certain it will work. Eri, impressed by his quick thinking, compliments him, and he encourages her to share any ideas she comes up with as well. Soon, they emerge from the forest, and the sea stretches before them, glimmering in the sunlight. The girls' spirits lift instantly, and they take in the breathtaking view with joy. Shinomiya shares their excitement, already calculating ways to gather shellfish, seaweed, and fish for food. Noticing the sun beginning to dip toward the horizon, he warns that they should return before darkness falls. The girls inquire where he means by return, and he reveals that they will need to go back to the cave to confront the tiger. He pulls 2 flares from his bag, and the girls gasp, realizing he is serious about facing the predator. Mana hesitantly asks if they are expected to join him in the fight, and he affirms that they must act together. Otherwise, the plan won't succeed. He explains that a display of strength will teach the tiger to respect humans, ensuring it avoids them in the future. However, recognizing that he is far stronger than the others, Shinomiya devises a strategy that uses their combined efforts in a safer, more calculated way. As they walk, he begins explaining the plan in detail. Suddenly, the mischievous monkey from earlier reappears, leaping into Mana's arms as before. Laughing, she calls it Rita, having quickly grown fond of the animal, which now seems devoted to her. Shinomiya watches quietly, noting how the small bond might even be useful in keeping the forest creatures distracted during their upcoming challenge. Shinomiya knew exactly what Rita was focused on, and the monkey began making various expressions and gestures to show Mana that the tiger was still in front of the cave and no other animals were nearby. Shinomiya was amazed at how much Mana could understand through her interaction with Rita, a truly incredible ability. The other girls joked that she seemed like a monkey boss or a circus tamer. As they drew closer to the cave, Shinomiya instructed everyone to move as quietly as possible. They spotted the tiger sleeping, which he noted worked in their favor, though the girls couldn't help but worry whether their plan would succeed or if they might end up as prey. Shinomiya acknowledged their concerns as valid but explained that if they didn't act now, they would spend the night in constant fear. He told them to prepare to repel the tiger, and the girls steeled themselves to follow his strategy. With a sudden rush, they approached the tiger and disturbed its rest. Shinomiya kept his gaze unwavering, showing no fear, and urged the others not to falter, or the tiger could strike. The tiger responded with a deafening roar, exactly the moment the girls feared most, and they struggled to remain standing as the ground shook beneath its growls. Shinomiya calmly moved to the next stage of their plan. While the tiger glared at them, he ignited the flares and directed their bright light toward it. Startled by the sudden glow, the tiger stepped back slightly. Shinomiya signaled the others, and they all shouted at the tiger in unison, their voices rising to full intensity. Intimidated, the tiger eventually bolted, disappearing into the bushes. Relief and joy washed over the group. They had finally claimed the cave. The girls praised Shinomiya, calling him amazing, and he returned the compliment, saying they were all incredible for standing their ground. Mana confirmed that the tiger would no longer attack since they had instilled fear in it. Shinomiya felt satisfied, knowing the tiger would likely stay away for a while, and entered the cave to inspect it. Meanwhile, Arisa bounced around happily, her stomach growling from excitement and hunger. She wanted to eat something, but Karen warned the sun was setting fast. After Shinomiya ensured the cave was safe, Arisa suggested fishing in the river. He shook his head. Fishing would take too long, so for now, they would search for mushrooms. Arisa worried about poisonous ones, so Shinomiya offered to teach them how to identify safe mushrooms. Karen asked if they should also gather twigs and small branches for a bonfire. Shinomiya agreed, saying he needed someone to accompany him. Eri asked to volunteer him. While she collected branches, Shinomiya went searching for mushrooms and soon found some suitable for their meal. Eri leaned closer, asking if the mushroom was really safe to eat, and Shinomiya, feeling a bit flustered by her proximity, reassured her it was not only edible, but also delicious. She wondered whether there would be enough for everyone, and he confidently said it wouldn't be a problem, suddenly realizing how awkward it was being alone with a girl. Eri then questioned why they needed to gather branches too, since she could just burn textbooks with the lighter she had, and Shinomiya explained they needed to save resources, uncertain how long they might stay. He briefly thought about the possibility that she might have used that lighter for other purposes, but decided not to mention it. Meanwhile, Eri silently wondered how long she would be stuck here. Once they had collected enough mushrooms, Shinomiya suggested heading back by following the smoke from the flare he had set earlier. On the way down, Eri slipped, and he instinctively rushed to help, leaving the mushroom bag behind, and found himself flustered by her closeness. He quickly regained composure to check if she was okay, while she apologized for the slip and a broken button. Flustered, he turned away and suggested she rest a bit before they returned. Noticing his reaction, Eri moved even closer, wrapping him in a hug and teasingly asking why he was looking away. Shinomiya tried to hide his embarrassment when Eri hugged him, but she noticed his reaction immediately. She teased him, saying he didn't need to be so stiff since everyone gets flustered sometimes, and leaned in playfully, pushing him a little to see his response. Shinomiya quickly stepped back, warning her not to jump to conclusions, though in the process he accidentally brushed against her in the wrong spot, making her let out a startled sound. His heart raced, and he struggled to stay composed while she continued to tease him, insisting it was just payback for his earlier help, and joking that he should learn to relax around her. Shinomiya's thoughts spun as he tried to keep calm while being so close, and Eri, noticing his flustered state, laughed softly and said they relied on him too much to let him get worked up alone. He protested that she didn't need to fuss over him, but she smiled and insisted, prompting him to just try to stay calm. After a moment, she stepped back, brushing off the awkwardness and suggesting they head back before it got dark. Both of them were still blushing, and Shinomiya, curious and tense, asked if she often acted this teasingly with others. She shook her head, admitting she had never really done this before, and that it was special because she was trying her best. Shinomiya noted how natural she seemed despite that, and though he felt flustered, he appreciated the moment. Eri, embarrassed, quickly declared it was enough for today and reminded him that she wasn't at all like he might have imagined. Shinomiya tells her he doesn't think of her in that way, but she smirks and says, "Who could really know for sure?" Then she pauses and quietly instructs him to keep whatever just happened a secret between them. He nods, understanding the weight behind her words, and she presses him further, making him promise to protect them from now on. The tone makes him feel strangely as if she were a commanding, dominating wife, and a shiver of awkward amusement runs through him. They begin heading back to their cave, but the moment they arrive, he senses something is off. More people are present than expected, mostly boys in matching uniforms talking to the other girls, and his instincts immediately go on alert. Orisa notices him first and calls him out, remarking that he has returned to the others. Before he can respond, a boy named Byakuya steps forward, asking if he is really the one leading these girls. Noting that he had seen the smoke and flare earlier, and followed it to reach them, Byakuya rests a hand on Shinomiya's shoulder, smirking, and declares that he wouldn't mind bringing Shinomiya into his group as well. He adds that Shinomiya should understand that having more people around in a situation like this is ideal, and insists it would be a waste to leave someone like him alone. The girls relax slightly, pleased to see familiar classmates alongside them, and Shinomiya admits that indeed, more allies would be preferable, but he doesn't commit just yet. He needs to know what Byakuya's real intentions are, and the question clearly irritates the younger boy. At that moment, more students arrive, and their leader steps in, warning Byakuya not to start a quarrel. Politely, another boy approaches Shinomiya, saying he will explain their method to him. Shinomiya recognizes him as Sumirai Rito, the elder brother of Byakuya. The Sumirai siblings are at the top of both academics and sports, hailing from a prominent family that runs a major company. Rito carries a natural air of intelligence and charisma, while his younger brother is brash and wild, yet both command equal popularity within the school. Rito goes on to explain that their base is located on the hill behind them, and that they plan to light a fire as a signal for help. Shinomiya asks if that will be enough to ensure they are rescued, and Rito assures him it will work, explaining that his phone is equipped with an anti-kidnapping system capable of sending a signal to their family, even without radio coverage. Shinomiya mutters under his breath, impressed on the surface but inwardly aware that such a scene could only exist if they were still on Earth. If his deduction held true, clinging to hope of rescue would only bring more trouble. He ponders their next move quietly, then notices Rito calling to a boy, instructing him to put his phone in the bag. Despite the boy already carrying a heavy load, Shinomiya recognizes him as Tanaka from their class, the quiet otaku who often faces bullying. At that moment, Byakuya shouts at Tanaka, warning him not to drop his bag. Reito then turns to Shinomiya, acknowledging his survival and camping skills, insisting that if he wanted to be saved, he should join them. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Shinomiya refuses, declaring he will remain here. Reito and Byakuya consider him foolish, thinking he only wants freedom in the cave, and Shinomiya admits he does enjoy solitude. Reito shrugs, telling him he's free to act as he likes, and instructs the others to head back. Byakuya calls Mana to return as well, and Shinomiya assumes she will follow. Instead, Mana surprises him, choosing to stay of her own accord. Shinomiya hadn't expected her trust, though Byakuya surely understands her reasoning. She explains that leaving him alone after all their efforts would feel wrong. Soon, other girls step forward, agreeing with her, each deciding to stay with Shinomiya Hokage. Reito questions their sanity, but Mana calmly asks whether staying here truly matters. They won't be abandoned if rescue is possible. She reasons that if only Shinomiya remained, Reito and the others might leave him behind even when help arrived. With the girls there, though, Reito would have no choice but to intervene, as abandoning them would reflect poorly on the samurai group. Reito simply laughs, commenting that the girls are kind-hearted for choosing to stay with Shinomiya, even if it's just as a safeguard for his life. He turns and says he'll be waiting in case they change their minds, then begins walking away. Yet, it's clear in Shinomiya's eyes, and the others, that they are content here. Byakuya asks Reito if they should really leave those capable girls behind with Shinomiya, and Reito responds darkly that it's not their concern if the girls have decided to side with him, even temporarily. He adds there's no need to worry, since plenty of girls remain at the camp. Byakuya laughs, agreeing, and the group starts back, Byakuya exclaiming that he can't wait to fire a shot. The girls grimace at his lewdness in such a situation, and Arisa mutters that he reminds her of the man who tried to assault her at her part-time job. Eri, shifting topics, wonders if they could eat some mushrooms now, but Arisa's mind is too wild with LW jokes about mushrooms, and she seems ready to gnash at them with her teeth. Karen smacks her lightly to stop the ridiculous jokes, while Mana reminds Shinomiya that they all chose to stay with him instead of Reito, so he better not let them regret it. Shinomiya reassures them that he's got it covered, and suggests they go ahead and grill some mushrooms. They gather around the fire, roasting the mushrooms until ready, but the girls frown at the taste. They're bland as they are. Orisa struggles to sit properly in frustration, and Shinomiya tells them not to worry. He'll cast a spell on the mushrooms. Once they take a bite, their eyes widen as the flavor transforms completely. Karen guesses that he must have used curry powder, and Shinomiya confirms, saying he always carries some just in case. The girls appreciate his forethought, and Shinomiya hints that he already has a plan to get one more almighty spice. Shinomiya thinks aloud about gathering salt, pointing out that the sea could provide an endless supply if they simply boiled the water, which surprises the girls, especially Mana, who feels a twinge of embarrassment for not knowing it herself. While he uses his textbooks to fashion a makeshift pillow, Karen jokes about turning them into a bed, though Arisa seems content resting on the cool ground. Shinomiya insists they sleep early to prepare for tomorrow, but the girls hesitate, worried about washing up first. He suggests the river, cautioning them to keep their clothes from getting ruined, which Arisa teasingly misinterprets, accusing him of having strange intentions. He sighs, clarifying he just wants to reuse the rare fabric, and though the girls find it a little unhygienic, they accept it. Exhausted, he collapses into sleep, leaving the girls to do the same. When morning comes, Shinomiya wakes to find Arisa asleep beside him, her arms draped over him. Confused but careful not to alarm anyone else, he tries to move away, only to end up in a comically awkward tangle, her proximity causing him obvious discomfort while she continues to cling unconsciously. Struggling to free himself without causing a scene, he finally manages to slip away, though Arisa inadvertently catches him again, creating an even more awkward situation. Startled when she finally wakes, she yelps in surprise, which rouses the other girls, and in a flustered mix of embarrassment and confusion, she insists she was being molested, leaving Shinomiya panicked and the others wide-eyed. Mana turns to Shinomiya, pressing him for an explanation. And he patiently insists it was all a misunderstanding, reminding everyone that he was in his own space while Arisa was supposed to be in hers. He explains that she wandered over half asleep, which finally clicks for Mana. And Arisa, realizing he might be telling the truth, quickly apologizes for jumping to conclusions. Shinomiya feels a wave of relief at her acceptance, while Mana checks if she's really okay now. Not missing a chance to tease, she hints at whether he gained anything from the awkward mishap, leaving him squirming and awkwardly trying to ignore the comment. Glancing around at the group, he notices the mood has brightened considerably, laughter and chatter filling the air as their little tension fades. Shifting focus, Shinomiya outlines the day's tasks, collecting rocks. Eri notes that there are plenty scattered everywhere, and wonders aloud what they might do with them. Shinomiya simply smiles mysteriously, calling it a surprise and insisting they'll have to wait and see. He asks if they'll need wood, looking to Karen, who seems to have an idea of his plan. Impressed, he leaves it to her, then calls Eri over to gather wood and sends Mana off to search for provisions. Finally, it's Arisa's turn, and before he can assign anything, she excitedly declares that she's already decided. They can catch a lot of fish today. Shinoma nods in agreement, mentioning that it's a low-priority task for now, then turns to Mana and instructs her to gather as many provisions as possible. She immediately volunteers to have Rita assist, prompting Shinomiya to tease that Arisa will probably end up like Bazu. Arisa, flustered, protests loudly, insisting she's not bald, and arguing instead that Shinomiya is the one who won't manage to catch a single fish. Eri chimes in, asking what they'll be doing next, and Hakage explains that there's a lot on the agenda, starting with making earthenware. He describes the process, shaping the clay, placing it near the fire to bake, inserting charcoal, and finally finishing it once it's fully hardened. The group stares in surprise, realizing it's exactly what they'd read about in their textbooks. Shinomiya confirms that today they'll get a taste of life in the Paleolithic and the Jaeman Empire. Eri suggests limiting their exploration to the river, warning that if they encounter wild animals, they should retreat immediately to the cave. The scene shifts to the start of their work, with Arisa arriving alongside Shinomiya, proudly carrying the clay she bought. He thanks her and asks if she minds using a dirty bag, but she shrugs it off, saying she can wash it in the river. Eager to fish, she spots a rod, and Shinomiya assures her it's ready, having crafted it with a needle. Excited, she grabs it immediately, ignoring Shinomiya's warning to wait and throwing the line into the river with wide-eyed anticipation. When Shinomiya reminds her that she still needs to attach bait, she hesitates, startled by the earthworm, but quickly steels herself, declaring she can do it. Meanwhile, Shinomiya turns back to shaping the clay pot as the hours slip by, the group busy with their tasks, and the river scene filled with quiet determination and a touch of playful chaos. Arisa watches Shinomiya with a smile, noting how much fun he seems to be having making the earthenware. Shinomiya asks if she should stop paying attention, but she shrugs, saying nothing is biting yet. Suddenly, her rod twitches, and Shinomiya points out that it might mean she's caught something. Surprised but determined, she realizes there's no reel, so she has to pull it up herself. Struggling and nearly losing her grip, Shinomiya quickly steps in to steady her. Flustered, she protests, worried about falling, and Shinomiya reminds her that if she slips, she could catch a cold, which there's no medicine for. She reluctantly agrees, letting him guide her movements. Carefully, he instructs her on how to pull the rod slowly, counting to 3 before helping bring the fish out of the water. Relief and excitement fill Arisa as she finally lands the catch. Amazed that the simple rod Shinomiya made actually worked, she calls him over, examining the fish with wide-eyed curiosity, wondering if it's a new species. Shinomiya glances, politely averting his eyes, and confirms it's just a normal iguana. Arisa laughs, teasing him about sexual harassment in jest, while holding her prized catch proudly. Shinomiya asks if Arisa meant buza, and she quickly suggests they should enjoy the fish fresh while they have the chance. He shakes his head, explaining it's better to wait until the pot is fully stuffed with charcoal so everyone can share it, and she thanks him for the help. He smiles back, noting it's thanks to her efforts that they'll have the fish tonight. Arisa, still teasing, admits that when he steadied her from behind, she felt a little flustered, prompting Shinomiya to laugh at her earlier claims of harassment. She giggles, admitting it's true and even jokes that a little harmless teasing might be okay, suggesting that if the molester is well-intentioned, It almost makes her innocent. Then, thoughtfully, she mentions that someday they'll return to normal life. And, when that day comes, she'd like to go on a date with him. Shinomiya comments on how persistently amusing she is, and she grins, insisting they should have that date. He laughs and agrees, and they silently promise each other. The scene shifts, showing the group's amazement at Arisa's catch. She stands proudly, insisting Shinomiya only helped a little, while she deserves full credit for landing the fish. Mana asks about the pot, and Shinomiya replies that it's still baking. The group checks their gathered supplies, with IRI holding up the wood and mushrooms, asking if it's enough. Shinomiya confirms it is, but points out a few poisonous mushrooms mixed in, leaving them momentarily stunned. When Eri asks if they'll discard them, he shakes his head, explaining he'll use them to make a talisman. Mana blinks in surprise as he elaborates that handled this way, the mushrooms will keep animals away from the cave, since wildlife is far more sensitive to poison than humans. Understanding clicks for everyone, and they praise him, marveling that it was exactly the clever solution they expected. Karen asks if he can watch over her rocks, since she has sorted them carefully by size and type. He glances at the neatly arranged piles and praises her work, calling it marvelous, then thanks her warmly. Curious, he asks if she knows much about rocks, adding that her effort and intelligence are impressive. She blushes slightly at the compliment, pleased by his words. Hawkage studies her for a moment and realizes he underestimated the girls. Their skill and dedication surpass what he expected. The girls glance at him, urging him to eat quickly. As he does, a fleeting sense of being watched brushes over him, but he dismisses it as imagination. Once they finish their meal, they ask what the plan for the afternoon will be. Seeing the progress they've made, he decides to speed things up a bit and rearranges their tasks. Arisa mentions wanting to do more fishing, which he agrees to, leaving her routine unchanged along with Mama's. Then he instructs Eri to gather mud and calls Karen over, asking her to start working on stone crafting. She immediately understands his plan and replies that she's ready. Shinomiya asks if he can guide her through it, and she, familiar with the Jaemin period, requests a few pointers. He notes her sharp mind and historical knowledge, realizing how it will make the work much smoother. Karen chooses to accompany Arisa to the river and asks if she wants to fish as well, but Arisa declines. Hawkage observes Karen and senses a reserved, slightly distant nature compared to the other girls. Watching her handle the rocks, he notices her efficiency and precision in sorting by type and size. Her calm, composed manner doesn't reveal much, but her actions show that she trusts him. He decides he can craft stone tools from her collection. He begins with a sharp implement, fashioning a knife by cutting the wood to fit the stone and then plugging it into place. He stomps on the rock, thinking it's a task for men, but Karen lifts another rock, smashes it with force, and carefully rubs it to sharpen it. He drills a hole into the wood, and finally, the tool is complete. He notes that this will speed up their material gathering. Watching in awe, someone asks if it's a stone axe. Shinomiya confirms, explaining he is making stone tools. He notices a bag nearby and inquires if it belongs to Eri, which Karen confirms, mentioning it needs washing first. She examines the tools, praising his skill as each piece takes shape. He deflects the compliment, pointing out Eri's contribution in collecting the wood and Karen's careful selection of rocks. He thanks her, noting that gathering all those rocks is the toughest part of the work. As he glances at her, he notices her careful attention to detail, and Eri nudges him teasingly about staring too long. Shinomiya quickly focuses back on the task, recalling the progress they made yesterday. She notices his brief distraction and laughs, asking if he's really concentrating, which makes him flush slightly. He reminds her that he's busy working, and she grins, joking that he should keep up his focus. Shinomiya stays quiet, determined to finish the tools. After a while, he steps back to inspect their progress. Karen and the other girls return, eyes widening at the array of stone tools Shinomiya has crafted. They marvel at the sharp axes and knives, clearly impressed. Azuri steps forward, noting that he's managed to make quite a few useful tools. Mana cheerfully declares that such hard work deserves a little reward, making the group laugh nervously. Arisa volunteers to demonstrate how the tools can be used effectively, and the girls gather around, eager to learn and test their new equipment. If you want, I can continue reworking the rest of your narration in this same toned-down, polished manga style, Keeping all the original events but safe for any audience, Arisa proudly shows the fish they've caught, and everyone's eyes widen. There's one for each of them, Arisa teases, mentioning that Karen seems a little uneasy around earthworms, making her laugh nervously and ask how anyone could fish without them. Shinomiya glances at Arisa and asks if she wasn't afraid of worms at first. She frowns, annoyed that he brought it up, but he quickly adds that he's just glad they managed to secure a proper meal. Then he presents the salt he's prepared, which leaves them equally impressed. He explains that while working on the stone tools, he boiled down seawater, though it only yielded a small amount. Mana leans closer, curious, and asks if it's a bento box. Shinomiya clarifies that it's actually a camping cooker, but it can double as a bento box. Mana nods, noting how monotonous the curry flavor had become. He lights the flames and cooks the fish on the cooker, and when they taste it, the salt enhances the flavor remarkably. Yuri wrinkles her nose, commenting that it's a bit bitter and asking if it burned. Shinomiya shakes his head, explaining that the bitterness comes from minerals, and if they refined it further, they could produce proper table salt. Karen remarks that their surroundings still feel like an ideal environment. Shinomiya glances at her, asking if she truly thinks so. Mana tilts her head, curious, asking what she means. Karen explains that the temperature isn't too hot or cold. The humidity is just right, and they have both the sea and the river nearby. A cave offers shelter from rain and wind, making the location almost perfect. Eri teases that Karen talks as if she were Shinomiya herself, but Karen admits that her knowledge is rooted in history, which doesn't help much in terms of survival. Shinomiya points out that she's overlooking something crucial. There are no mosquitoes here. Arise questions if that matters, since they could just swat them. Hawkage shakes his head, explaining that mosquitoes have historically been one of the leading causes of death, spreading infections that claim hundreds of thousands each year. He notes that he hasn't seen any signs of scorpions, spiders, snakes, or other venomous creatures. For survival, he adds, being free of these hazards makes things considerably easier. Someone appears from behind, and Arisa jumps back, shouting, asking who it is. The sudden noise startles Shinomiya, and he stumbles, landing right at the girl's feet. The girl leans down slightly, smiling mischievously, and asks if she can join them too. The unknown girl stands in front of them, smiling as she asks if they'll let her join. Arisa points toward her, explaining that she's Asakura Meiko, though she isn't from their class. Shinomiya frowns, recalling that the Sumeragi brothers had also been transported here, and wondering aloud if everyone here came from their classroom. The girl reassures him that it's safe, and just then another girl emerges from behind a tree, introducing herself as Asakura Hinyako, Meiko's little sister, and a first-year student. Eri greets her warmly, commenting on how cute she is, and how nice it is to meet her. As the girls begin chatting, Shinomiya realizes even someone a year younger has been caught up in this, and he wonders how many humans in total were transported to the island. Meiko asks if they can join the group, and all the girls turn to look at Shinomiya. He nods, explaining that they could use the extra help and welcomes them to assist. Meiko and her sister beam, opening their bags to reveal an assortment of sewing tools, threads, and crafting implements. She explains that they belong to the handicraft club and brought along their tools, having already mastered the basics, even though the club's projects are only halfway done. Observing their supplies, the girls' eyes widen at how simple and effective the tools are, noting that making clothes with holes on each side is almost child's play. Shinomiya remarks that this was a standard style of clothing during the Yayoi period. Excited, the girls gather around Meiko, asking her to make clothes for them too. Meiko agrees, promising it will take some time but expressing happiness at being able to speak freely with them. Arisa remarks that it's their first proper meeting, and Meiko admits she's naturally shy but cannot stay quiet, especially with her younger sister being even more reserved. Karen interjects, reminding her that, wherever she first regained consciousness, she hasn't met anyone for the past day and a half. She notes that Sumeragi and the others have been maintaining a signal fire since the previous evening, suggesting that would normally be the first place to head. Meiko explains that, due to certain circumstances, they've been observing them since that morning. Shinomiya asks about the previous day, and she recounts waking up in a cave, staying there for a while, spotting smoke, and following it, bumping into others along the way, which led them to spend the night there. Hinako shivers quietly as her sister recounts the events. Eri asks what happened next. Did they try to run away? Miyako shakes her head, promising to explain everything. She begins describing how they were taken to the past, where the boys had built a bonfire. Reito instructs them to ensure the fire doesn't go out. Before a stone marker, Miyako and Hinako sit together, and Byakuya approaches, casually thanking them. He sits next to Miyako, telling her not to worry about food and water, claiming a rescue team will arrive soon, but his intentions are far from honorable. He places a hand on her shoulder, suggesting they get to know each other better, and begins touching her inappropriately, implying that she owes him because he is guarding them. Hinako starts crying as she watches, realizing this is no longer the world they know. Byakuya remarks that her younger sister doesn't interest him yet, and that he'll deal with her afterward. Enraged, Miyako shoves his hand away, shouting that he will never touch her sister. He smiles cruelly, accusing her of treating him like a villain despite supposedly saving them. Miyako declares they are leaving and do not need his disgusting protection. Byakuya protests, grabbing Mako's hand and asking who would forgive them, but at that moment, Reito arrives, questioning the commotion and warning not to break the rules. Byakuya explains that she wants out. Reito calmly states that food and water have been secured and that rescue is imminent, asking if there is anything lacking. Mako challenges him, questioning if everyone here is acting willingly. Reito admits he had considered overlooking the incident but recognizes that some may not wish to stay. He tells them they are free to leave, placing no pressure on them. With that, Mako and Hinako start to move. Byakuya clenches his teeth, berating Reito for being too lenient, worrying that if help doesn't arrive soon, things could take days. Reito responds that rules exist to maintain order, and there's no need to worry about those who refuse to follow them. Byakuya seethes, inwardly simmering with frustration that rules are meaningless when power, money, and politics are at stake. As Mako recounts everything to the girls, she admits she's glad they left when they did, fearing that otherwise they might not have been able to. She apologizes for doubting them, but quickly adds that she had doubted all of them at first too, so it's fine. Watching everyone cooperate happily, she feels a wave of relief and gratitude for being welcomed into the group. Shinomiya, thinking back to when he first spoke to her, realizes she already remembers his name, and quietly tells her that it was she who saved them. Eri notices him lost in thought and teases, asking if he's thinking about something. He muses that it might be time to remove Byakuya's influence from within. She nods, agreeing that following his older brother, he is formidable, but that also means there could be cracks forming inside their ranks. The girls start chatting among themselves while he continues observing, noting that in sheer strength, Byakuya holds the advantage, and if Raito loses authority and Byakuya remains unchallenged, it could be disastrous. Mana interrupts, refusing to dwell on heavy topics, and declares it's time for a welcome party, reminding them that no one has eaten since the day before. The girls hand food to Mako, urging her to eat, while Shinomiya's mind drifts back to Byakuya, imagining him noticing Mana and the others. Knowing that Mako and Hinako are also present, he realizes he'll need to make some careful preparations. On the third day, Shinomiya stretches as the morning sun rises, and Mana appears, teasing that she happened to wake up early and followed him. He explains he wanted to finish his work before everyone else woke up. She smiles, saying he's doing it for them, but he corrects her, claiming he does it because he enjoys it. Noticing they are alone together for the first time, she teases him, insisting he should feel lucky to spend the morning at the beach with her. He can't resist commenting on her beauty, making her blush, but she quickly redirects him, asking what she can do to help, though she jokingly warns him no itchy stuff. He begins taking off his shirt, prompting her to shout in surprise, and he explains that he needs to do it to dive into the ocean and collect seaweed. Mana calls a nearby monkey to help him gather shells on the shore, realizing the plan makes sense. She had briefly suspected something else, noticing their flushed faces. In the playful chaos, she swings at him, but her leg slips, and she ends up tumbling lightly onto him. Mana lands lightly on top of Shinomiya, and he hesitates, asking if she can move aside. She complains that he's just stating the obvious, and he explains he can't move because of her weight. She teases him, insisting he's overreacting, while he points out that he really wants her to get off him. Laughing, she jabs at him, claiming he must be flustered and teasing him about being inexperienced. He tries to stand, noting her own flushed ears, but she retorts confidently that she gets what she wants. She pushes him back gently, declaring him weak, and he protests that it only feels that way because she's on top. Amused, she moves even closer, hinting at a playful kiss. He asks what she wants, and she replies that she plans to steal his lips. He struggles to react, recalling past awkwardness with Edie, which only frustrates her further. With a mischievous pout, she leans in again, and this time they share a brief, teasing kiss, both smirking and blushing. He remarks that he had planned to return before anyone else woke, but now it might be too late to hide. She notices the goggles on his head, teasing that he forgot them in his bag after swimming class, and he admits she does the same often. Laughing, she asks him to keep what just happened between them, and he agrees. Soon after, he dives into the water to collect seaweed, emerging later to see Karen and Arisa holding the gathered seaweed and shells. Shinomiya comments that he thought they had vanished, but Karen admits she was shocked to find them missing when she woke up. Just then, Mako steps forward, asking if she can have a moment, and as everyone enters the cave, she reveals a makeshift cushion-like bed she prepared. She explains that she patched together the sheets they could find, so it's not a real futon, but Shinomiya notes it's a huge improvement over sleeping on the hard ground. Mako promises that by nightfall there will be one for everyone. Arisa beams, mentioning the fish she caught, and Eri adds that she collected a variety of edible-looking ingredients. Shinomiya glances at the seaweed and remarks that, if they continue like this, they'll be able to stock up nicely. Arisa declares she'll go fishing, while Eri proudly shows what she harvested following his instructions. He examines the shells carefully, sniffing them, and noting that the meadow saffron mixed with alpine leeks is valuable. Eri apologizes, thinking it might not be useful. Shinomiya then extends a fruit from his bag, explaining it's a cherry mayo. She asks if it's edible, admitting she picked it on a hunch, while Mana spots it and exclaims that it looks like ice cream and wants to try it immediately. He confirms it's ripe, so safe to eat. Karen hands him spoon, commenting that making a wooden spoon was a good choice, and with it, he slices the fruit in half, letting everyone taste a spoonful that is delightfully sweet, almost like ice cream. He praises Eri's effort for making it possible, and she happily says she needs to remember where she found them. Karen reminds her to avoid eating any seeds or the outer shells. While the girls chatter and laugh among themselves, Shinomiya surveys their supplies, food, water, salt, and the stone tools they've made, and thinks about how much more they could craft, including soap, with what they have gathered. He remembers muttering that he would build a house soon, and the idea immediately grabs everyone's attention. Arisa asks what he just said, and Mana, surprised, questions if he really can build one. He explains that he wants to make a secret hideout. Arisa protests that it would have holes like the cave and insists she wants a proper house. He points out that their collection of items is growing and that more people might join them, even from the Jaemin period, and he's confident he could manage it. Mana and Eri react in amazement, with Arisa happily remarking that following him instead of Raito was the right choice. He admits there's still a long way to go before the house is complete, and mentions that he hasn't even started on the bathtub. Later that night, the girls spread all the blankets on the floor, sinking into the makeshift bedding with relief. Shinomiya lies down, appreciating the comfort, and thinks about getting a good sleep before beginning to preserve food the next day. If this world truly has 4 seasons, he realizes, they must prepare for the approaching winter. Suddenly, raindrops tap onto the leaves above, quickly escalating into a heavy downpour. His eyes snap open at the sound, and he dashes toward the cave's entrance to see the rain pouring fiercely outside. Shinomiya bursts into the cave, shouting for everyone to wake up. The storm has arrived. The girls startle awake, shrieking as thunder crashes around them. He warns that the rain is heavy and the cave is beginning to flood. Karen panics, fearing they'll drown, while the others shout that they need to run. He quickly tells them it's too dangerous to leave at night, and that higher ground deeper inside the cave will keep them safe until dawn. Karen insists they move their belongings first, asking what to prioritize. Eri points out Arisa's scattered cosmetics, and Arisa frantically scoops them up from the rising water, lamenting that all her effort might be ruined. Water from the waterfalls and extinguished bonfire mingles with the flooding, But he lights a torch and calms them, explaining that if they stay collected, they can move the most vulnerable items first, save provisions that can be dried or remade later, and leave what can't be salvaged. The girls spring into action, Mako suggesting the futons could be preserved or replaced later, while he decides to focus on moving food first. Arisa volunteers to gather everyone's bags, and Shinomiya observes that everyone has calmed down. Working together, they can handle anything the storm throws at them. They move deeper into the cave, carefully carrying all the important supplies, and Shinomiya remarks that they've mostly secured everything, thanking everyone for their effort despite the emergency. Mieko expresses relief that he noticed the danger in time, and Eri praises his dependability, joking that he should be top 2 soon. As the girls chatter, their voices fade and one by one they drift to sleep, but Shinomiya remains awake, burdened by thoughts of a mistake he could have prevented. He should have dug a canal earlier to prepare for this kind of flood. Supplies were still being stocked, and the timing was unfortunate, but he feels grateful for their luck and resolves to never make the same error again. After all, he is their leader, and their safety rests with him. Taking a deep breath, he realizes sleep won't come, and then feels the sudden warmth of someone leaning against him, an arm wrapping around his, a head resting on his shoulder. Confused at first, he wonders if it's Arisa sleepwalking, but sees she's elsewhere. The warmth calms his restless mind. Suddenly, she leans closer, and their lips meet, sending his heart racing. But just as quickly, she vanishes. Panic surges, wondering if she's gone, yet he notices a shadowed figure still hesitating nearby. Relief and realization hit him. It's Karen.